Hello, my name is Shandine Deputy. This is my video presentation for History 325. So I'm going to start off with the four sources, primary documents that I located for this assignment. The first was a certificate of naturalization for Satima Vicoli. It was written in 1952. The document for Vicoli is a certificate of naturalization that lists her country of origin as Italy. It gives personal information such as date of birth, age, home address, photo, her sex, female description, and marital status. The document has a brief description of the laws Vicoli shall follow as a naturalized citizen of the United States of America. The next document that I found was a letter from an American farmer. It was written in 1782 by Hector Saint Jean de Crèvecoeur. In his letter, he speaks about the United States in loving terms. The only immigrants in 1782 came from Northern Europe. So the author is speaking about life without aristocracy ruling a land full of peasants. He speaks of a land filled with where every man works the fields from Nova Scotia to Florida, and the United States to him is a land filled with humble peasants of Europe proud to live in humble conditions. The author also writes about loyalty to his new country because it has given him a place to own land and a home. The third document that I located was a letter from the circular letters between 1898 and 1907. This letter was written January 25th of 1893, and it was written by the Immigration Restriction League. This letter concerned the Lodge Bill, which was created with the intent to require immigrants to pass a literacy test before they could become citizens. The letter states immigrants who cannot read or write before they become citizens are likely to live in low standards of living. The Germans felt that this letter would conflict with their way of life, and if the literacy test became established, that their language would vanish also. The IRL felt the Germans were in conflict with the United States, well, this group of Germans anyway, because they practiced Catholicism, and the letter's intent was to make the Germans understand the reasoning behind the Lodge Bill. My fourth and final document is an affidavit given by a police officer, O.A. Weiss, in the case of Chen Wing. The document was written December 1st of 1905, and it's part of the Records of Immigrations and Naturalization Service. Weiss was a part of this affidavit in an attempt to try Chen Wing as an illegal immigrant. And so the affidavit is just questions and answers, and so some of them were to gauge whether or not Wing was engaged in illegal business. Some of the questions included how large the store was, what type of shelving was in the store, did the store hold a restaurant, and how many Chinese men were in the store at the time, and what kind of activities occurred. It also asked if Weiss could identify any of the Chinese men in the establishment. So, what are some of my arguments that I'm going to make using these four documents? I think the first one that I'll look at is in the case of Chen Wing, and I'm really going to look at the questions that were asked of Officer Weiss, because when we read Lee, when I read Lee, it really made me think about the section where it talked about all of the questions and the interrogating that occurred. And a lot of the interrogations that the Chinese went through were very invasive. The interrogations could last hours, they could last days, and it didn't matter if you were rich or poor, everyone was susceptible, as long as you were Chinese, to these interrogations. And it didn't matter if you were poor or wealthy, because according to Lee, every Chinese was detained. The next one that I'll look at is the IRL, the IRL circular letter, because the IRL, or the Immigration Restriction League, played a really important part in immigration, and especially in the Chinese Exclusion Act. The Chinese Exclusion Act was really pushed around California up by Angel Island because the Immigration Restriction League did not want the Chinese in their area. If they could have had their way, every Chinese individual trying to come into Angel Island would have been denied and sent back to China. Next, I'm going to look at the Vocoli naturalization document, and I really think I want to compare how the immigrants coming through Ellis Island compared with Angel Island, because in her naturalization document you can see there are physical descriptions concerning her, but they're not on the same level as what was done to the Chinese. I don't remember what the policy was called at the moment, but I do know that the Chinese had much more physical descriptions put into their documents than your white immigrants. And so I want to compare the two, because the Chinese had descriptions of their arm length, their chest length, their hand length, their genital length. It was very, very invasive. So I want to compare those two. And then lastly, I want to look at the letters from an American farmer, because I think it was really naive of him to think that further into the future the land was all going to be for the poor, and it was just going to be wonderful for the poor to come over for Europe and really work the land and be open to everybody, because that's not what happened. If he could have looked on into the future, he would have seen that immigration for the rich, if you were very wealthy, then you were accepted, especially if you came from Northern Europe. That was really important. If you came from Southern Europe or Asia, you looked different, you spoke different, your skin color was different, you were excluded, and there were attempts to send you back. If you were poor, and the law stated that if you were to become a burden to the United States of America within a year, then you were deported. So I really want to look at that because, like I stated before, I think it was really naive of him to think that America was really going to be open to everybody. And so what do I think about American immigration, as America being a nation of immigrants? I think to a certain extent, yes, America is a nation of immigrants, because you had a lot of people coming in, whether it was legally or illegally. And then American as a beacon of liberty. I think to the immigrants trying to come here, yes, it was a beacon of liberty, but once they got into Angel Island, Ellis Island, or wherever they were trying to come into port, they, especially the poor, met a lot of resistance. And I think that led to a lot of the illegal immigration going on. I think the Chinese Exclusion Act started a lot of the immigration policies, and it also led to the illegal immigration coming from Canada, from Mexico, from those borders, and from other places. So I know it's a lot to look at in 5 pages, so I'm going to do what I can. But I really think my argument is that America became a place for the rich to oppress and attempt to exclude the poor, and those who looked different, and racism played a major role in immigration. Thank you.